Hi, I'm Sheila and welcome back to my channel, Seaside Snuggles, Quilts, Patterns, and Crafts, where I focus mainly on quilting, but will craft anything that tickles my fancy. So today, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who watched my video and commented on it or didn't comment on it, just watched it. I really picked up a lot of subscribers and I don't know what the difference was, but I am so appreciative. I just want to say thank you up front and for the questions and everything. So that video was so popular that I decided to go ahead and finish the quilt. These blocks may look familiar. These are the ones that we made in that free pattern. And to continue with free patterns, we're going to make this 6-inch section that I used to fill in the gap. I made this medallion and I am going to do a video on that medallion. I'm actually working on it right now. It's very long though, and so I'm trying to decide whether or not I should break it up into 2 parts or not. Let me know down below if you'd just rather have the whole thing into 1 or if you want it broken up into 2. If I break it up into 2, it'll be the drafting of the pattern, and then the second will be the making of the medallion itself. If I just have it as 1, it'll be both things together, obviously. But today, let's focus on this part here. The reason that I made these parts is because when I did this pattern, my math was in error and I thought it was going to finish at 16 inches, but it actually finishes at 15 inches. You square it up to 15.5, but I had 16 inches in my head, and so I made a medallion that was 32 inches, 2 times 16. Well, when I brought the medallion over here all finished and looking nice, I was 2 inches short with my medallions. So I had to find 2 inches that I could insert as sashing or something. And what I decided to do instead was to not just do sashing between my blocks. I decided to kind of frame the medallion with 2 inches, which added 2 inches on each side, plus the 2 inches I was missing gave me a 6-inch gap. So I needed to create a filler block that is 6 inches, finishes 6 inches by 15 inches. When I say finishes, that means it's ½ inch smaller than what you're going to cut it. So when you cut this up to square it, you're going to cut it 6.5 inches by 15.5 inches. Okay, so this is what I came up with. It uses a Seminole technique of duplicating a piece over and over, laying it either vertically or on a 45, or sometimes on a 60, and just creating a pattern that way. I love Seminole piecing. I love it so much. I might do a video on the different Seminole piecing techniques that I've tried so far. Anywho, this is what we're going to focus on today. And if you want to join me at the cutting table, I'll show you what you need. So let's get started.
Okay, so once again, forgive me for having stuff all over my table. It's the holiday season. I'm working on a million different things. But this is the segment we're going to make that block, and this is what you're going to need to make it. You're going to need to make 5 of these, 4 of these that are whole, 2 of these that are partial, and this is what you're going to need. You're going to need 10 half square triangles. These are half square triangles that came from my cutoff of making the other quilt block, and I just cut them down to 1.5 inches cut. They will finish 1 inch in the block. And I have this teeny tiny ruler. I used it way more than I thought I would. And I'm not saying you have to buy it, but you may find it useful if you make small blocks. So I wanted to incorporate those half square triangles that I cut off of the other block. If I make a pattern for my floor, I'll have different sizes of this block in the pattern, but this block at this size, which will finish 6 by 15, is free. So I'll put all the numbers down in the description below. She'll need 10 of these. 2 of them are already here, so here are 8. Again, these are cut 1.5 inches. You will also need 6 2¼ by 2¼ inch squares, and I have 2 different colorways, but you could have them all in the same colorway. You'll need, again, I'm using 2 different colorways, but you can use all the same colorway, but you'll need 10 1¼ by 1.5 inch sections, 10 2¼ by 1¼ inch sections of each color. So you'll need a total, I'm about to take that back, that's not right. You're going to need 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, yeah, 10 of each color. So I may have too many here. I may have twice as many as I need here. I'll put the numbers down in the description. So you'll need 10 total. So I should have 5 of each. And last, you're going to need some rectangles in your background color, which is what I have here, that measure 5.5 inches by 2¼ inches. Now, oh, one more thing you'll need is a square of background that is 5 inches. So I forgot to cut that, or I forgot where I placed it, so let me do that real quick. I cut the strip and I didn't cut the square. So I'm cutting this 5.5 inches. It's actually going to be bigger than what you need, and your block will be bigger than the 15 by 6. It'll be longer. But I did it that way to give you some flexibility with whatever quilt you're making. So you'll actually be able to cut this a little larger. I think to 16.5 inches if you have a 16-inch block that you want to use this with. So what you want to do with your square is cut it on the diagonal. This is very much oversized, but it's fine. Alright. While I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and cut these as well. So here I have 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rectangles, and I have one upside down to remind me that I need to cut one of these blocks in the opposite direction of all the other blocks. So I'm going to use this rectangle and I'm going to fold it in half lengthwise, put a crease in what I think is the middle, fold it in half. Oops, let's make sure that I keep it halved this way, and my iron, so it just told me it was going off, it's still hot, so I'm going to actually use my iron to make this mark so that I have a mark right in the center of my rectangle. Now I'm going to take my ruler, I'm going to use the 45-degree angle line, and let's look at this now. This is the finished block. I need my cut to go up and to the left for most of my block. For my single block that's the other way, I need it to go up and to the right. So I'm going to cut this one up and to the right. And I'm going to do that by putting my 45-degree angle line on the edge of my block, and then I'm going to slide it down until the edge of my ruler is right in the center of that fold. Then I'm going to make a cut that goes up and to the left. So when I look at these two pieces, I actually cut the piece that I need, which matches this, which is up and to the left. I need all but one of these pieces to be cut the same way. So I'm going to flip one over, and I'm going to use this as a template, and I'm going to cut its mirror. I'm just going to line up the bottom, then I'm going to line up the edge using my ruler, and I'm going to cut this the opposite direction. So now these are the first ones that I cut, you can see because the fold is there, and then these, when they're placed right side up, are up and to the left. So you need just one pair up and to the right. My brain, up and to the right, and then all the rest need to be up and to the left. So I'm going to take this stack of 4. I feel comfortable cutting 4 layers of fabric. I just want to make sure that they're aligned. Then I'm going to use this as a template with my fabrics all facing up. So if you cut these from folded fabric, make sure that you go back and make all of the fabric face the same direction. And then I'm going to use this as a template to cut all the rest. And actually, let me use my 45-degree angle again just to verify that I'm still at 45 degrees. That looks great. There we go. So I've cut 5 rectangles up and to the left, 1 rectangle up and to the right. I'm just going to put that upside down on here. Now I have all of my cuts. As far as these pieces go, you can just cut 1 1/4 inch strips and then put your half square triangles on them and then cut them apart. That's what I did the first time, but for this demonstration I wanted to just have my pieces cut. Now, we're almost ready to go to the machine and start our piecing. We're going to start with these blocks. They're all going to be pieced the same, but we're going to do half with the pink and half with the red. Okay, this is my smaller pile because I already have 2 from here. So these are going to go with my pink, and these are going to go with my red. Now, I'm going to look at how I want to piece this on the machine. I like to have my seam allowance up if I can see it. And what I want is to piece it with my piece on top, just so that I can keep track of the direction of my seam allowance. I don't want it flipping on me or anything. So that means that I'm going to have this piece on the right hand side. So I'm going to put this right hand piece in the same orientation as the piece in the block here, which has the color to the top right and the background to the bottom left. And then my first piece of color, well, red fabric, is going to go to the left of that. To keep my brain straight here, I'm going to take my whole pile and I'm going to put all the background pieces in the same orientation, and I'm going to do the same thing here. I don't need all of these red. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with the pink. So I have 4 of the pink. I'm going to orient my pieces the same way, and then I only need 4 of these. Okay, so now I can flip this on top, and I know it's going to be oriented correctly, and I can take this to the machine and sew it. So I'm just going to set that on the machine. But I'm going to go ahead and prep all of these so I can just grab them and chain piece. And it'll go much faster. I just want to make sure that I'm keeping everything oriented in the same direction. Now, something else I could do is flip this over, because my seam allowance will point down, so I could flip all these over like this and not worry about the seam allowance flipping because it's already down. And actually, I think I'm going to sew that way because I think it will be even easier. My longer side is what's going to match up with the block. And then I'm just going to flip it over. That keeps my sewing side on the same side. And I could just double check and look at all of them. They're all set up the same way. I'm going to start chain stitching. So if you'd like to meet me at the sewing machine. Okay, so we're ready to sew, and I'm going to flip this over like I've done all the rest, and we're going to start sewing. I don't know what I do with my little spider. Sorry for the wind. Got a little dual bomb cyclones going on here on the West Coast. We've been fortunate that it hasn't affected our power, which is wild here because we always have power issues. But the thing that it has affected is our internet connection. So I'm hoping I'll be able to get this uploaded. Alright, that's all of them. Let's go separate and press them. So let's get my little snips. And we'll separate these. Now we're going to press these towards the small rectangle. And I'm just finger pressing for now. Let's go ahead and get my iron heating up, because I do want these to be nice and flat before I add the next piece. Alright, I'm going to give the pile a little squirt of water, and then we're going to press. Switch this up, and I'm just going to give these a little press. And I'm going to keep my pile separate. So I'm going to have like a pink pile and a red pile. And again, the reason I have 5 reds and 4 pinks is because I already have a pink block made here. And I'm going to keep them oriented all in the same direction. Let's bring this back down. Next thing I want to do is I want to add this to our long side, and these pieces are going to go on the side with the background piece. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and these are going to be sewn the same way. I think I'm going to rotate them so that we'll put the solid piece on top. We do have seam allowances going up and down here, but I think it'll be okay. So I'm going to rotate this as well. And so the way these are going to go together is this is just going to flip on top here on the side that the background fabric is showing. So just like that. I'm going to go set these up so that they can be chain pieces as well. And you may have noticed that these measurements are odd, but that's so that I could fit them into the quilt in the 6-inch space that I needed them for. But it works out that 1.5 inches, or sorry, 1 1/4 inch strips are half of a jelly roll piece. So you could do most of this block with jelly roll strips. The only parts you're going to have a little bit of difficulty with is the background pieces, which you can use jelly rolls for this because it's 2 1/4 inches wide. The thing is, when you get to the corner, you're going to have to like double up the jelly roll piece, which is fine. So, I mean, you could technically do these blocks just with jelly roll strips. Alright, so everything's set up to chain piece. Let's make a little space on my sewing table so I don't have to reach so far. And let's go sew all these together.
Alright. So, there we go. So the thing with cutting my pieces in advance is that my seam allowances aren't always a 1/4 inch or a scat 1/4 inch. So if I just sew them to a strip and then cut them apart, I'm cutting the fabric to the size of the block, and I don't have to worry about ever being short, whereas sometimes, I don't know, my sewing just is not even. It works out in the end though. So don't stress if you're like, oh, my seams are just awful, or my blocks are turning out just terrible. The trick isn't, in my opinion, getting perfect blocks. The trick is adapting to the blocks you get, so that your finished product looks amazing anyway.
Alright, boop boop. Let's cut these apart. You know, I want one of those little thread things, right? But I'm a crafty person and I don't want to buy one. I want to make one. I just don't have time right now. But I think I am going to make one. I think it would be immensely helpful because I chain piece all the time. Alright, let's give these a grip so they relax. Let's get them all over here. I'm going to be pressing towards the rectangle, so I'm going to have these all like up towards the rectangles on the upside when I twist them, because that's the fabric that's going to need to bend, right? So that's the one where I want to focus its bending properties. Finger press. Water does so much to help the pressing. I am a crazy steamer. And you will see me press that steam button repeatedly over and over again, even though I don't keep any water in my iron anymore. I wasn't dumping it like I should after use, and I was getting rust spots, and it was really making me sad. It was a bummer. So I decided just not to put any water in my iron anymore. I use a mister to moisturize my hair, and so it's just water in it. I use a mister for baking, and frisk the oven with mist water before I put my breads in, and a mister is just a great tool. Highly recommend it. I just got this one on Amazon. I will say not all misters are of the same quality. I bought both of the misters that I use now, because one I do use strictly for my hair, which is rose water in it, but I bought them from the same company. One's just clear and one's red, so that I could tell the difference. And it's still a little damp. Let me dry this out. And the one I use for my hair just seems to be of better quality than this clear one. I also bought that one first, so maybe they've cut some corners since then. I don't know. I can't in good conscience recommend it, because the second one is not of the same quality. Alright, so these should be 2 1/4. So I'm going to use my square up, and I want to, when I square these up, I want to make sure that I maintain this whole section with this half square triangle. So if anything comes off, it's going to be on this outside section. I'm going to line it up with my 2 1/4 inch mark. And then if anything comes off, I only want to take it off the outside corner where I just added pieces. I can clean this up, but I don't want to cut any fabric away down here. Just thread, if there's thread. Okay? So 2 1/4 is what we're aiming for with all of these. Maintaining all of the half square triangles down at the bottom. So it feels like I'm off a little bit down here. The half square triangle is what I want to cut to, so if any of the red comes off, that's okay. I'm going to put it back on here, 2 1/4. Again, you don't need this teeny tiny ruler, but I love mine. And really, you see there's hardly anything coming off. It's just a cleanup. You could probably skip this step if you find that you've been pretty consistent with your measurements. You could probably skip this step altogether. But there aren't too many blocks. So. If you weren't looking, I might skip it. Okay, that was actually pretty nice. I think in the interest of time, I'm going to only do the red ones, and I'm not going to do the pink ones. And then we'll see if they turn out differently. I don't think they will. Look at that's what I got off of 5 blocks. So I'm not going to do this anymore. Next step. My pink blocks are going to get these squares, and my red blocks are going to get these squares. So I'm going to do these first to match what I have. And notice that the way that these are positioned has the half square triangle on the bottom left here and on the top right here, so it's just rotated. But they're the same block, just rotated. Then when I put my square in, if you have directional fabric and it matters to you what the direction is, you want to be consistent with the direction of that fabric. And then I'm just kind of put this on the tile like this. That's how those are going to go. And then I'm just going to pile my red on top. These are not directional, so I could just pile them there. And then I'm going to put my red here. And I have an odd number of red, and I'm going to put my odd one on top. Okay? Then I'm going to take this top stack and I'm going to flip it onto the bottom pieces, and we're going to chain piece these. So I'm just going to take this like this, and these I'm going to piece with this on top because I have seams in both directions and then I don't want it to flip. I just need to remember that this is the side that I want to sew. So let's just rotate this. There we go. So right on top of middle, this is the side we're going to sew, which is the side with the half square triangle at the top right. Okay, half square triangle, top right. Alright, let's go to the machine and sew these. My other camera just stopped because I forgot to plug it in, so give me just a moment after I finish these. We'll get that plugged in and restarted. Bring them over here, and we'll cut these apart. Okay, so let's push this up and we'll get these ironed. And we're going to iron these towards the square. I'm not going to split these because the next seam is not dependent on this seam being flat. I just want to open it up for ease of ironing. Of piecing. Just a little dry heat on it. We'll give them a good brisk press later. Alright, so let's move that back down with all of our pieces on top. I'm going to turn this sideways so it's oriented like the pieces that we're putting together. I'm going to put my red to the side for a moment just so that we're apples to apples. And see how this is oriented? We're going to take our pink pieces and we're going to lay them back down. See? And you know what? One of these is going to be a half piece. So I'm going to take one of these out. I have an extra piece here that I don't think I need. Then we're going to put our red pieces back on. And we're going to put these pieces on the top. And let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So we have 1, 2, and we have 3 of these red, because one of these red needs to stay a 2-piece. So I'm just going to put that at the top there. There we go. We're going to keep it separate. So these are going to get these pieces. I'm going to just rotate this whole thing around just to keep my brain straight. And I'm going to flip this piece on top of here, and it's going to be sewn on just like the first side. So I should have 2 of each. This is my 1, this is my 2. Alright, so let's go sew these. again towards the center square. So I have my reds with my darker centers and my pinks with my lighter centers. Then we're going to separate these two that are the opposite direction. We're going to get these, and these are going to go on like this. 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6. Cut an extra pair. That wasn't deep anyway. These are also going to get a piece on the right side. So I've got 2 of these here, and they're going to get the same thing. Let's take these out that need to be ironed. Alright, so this is what we're going to sew. I'm going to sew the right side, and then we'll come back and we'll sew the left side. I'm just going to put these on top, and we'll take them to the machine and sew them. Now you could have sewn the sides on first. That might have been easier now that I'm thinking about it. Just sew all of these pieces onto the piece squares that we made. And then sew one on each side. So either way will work. If you do that, you want to make sure that you're sewing these background pieces onto the long rectangle of your piece squares. Okay. Then we're going to take these apart, and we're just going to sew the other sides on, and all of them, the other sides are the same. So it doesn't matter if we've got a pink one or a red one. The opposite sides are all the same, except for these pieces that only have the 2 blocks. So I'm going to sew these together real quick. I'm going to put them on top like this, rotate them like this, and we'll sew them on. Put my machine. Let's look at these. These are going to get our pieces that are sewn in the opposite direction. So they're going to form these trapezoid shapes instead of these parallelogram shapes. Okay? So those need to be sewn as well. So let's go do that. When I put these pieces on, I want to make sure that they're aligned, of course, on our sewing edge, but also along this edge, and that will help to keep the piece straight. So we'll get these as well. Windy out there, huh? The sun is shining though, that's why I wanted to record. It's like, well, it's not raining. Let's take advantage of that. So here's all of our pieces sewn. Let's make some room for spritzing and pressing. Alright, so I'm just gonna lay these like this for spritzing, because these are the sides that I'm going to fold out, so I want them to have the most flexibility. which we'll get from the water. And I'll give this another press too. And just kind of pull these sides out. And just like with the other block, you want it to be straight. So if you open it up with a finger press and find that it's not straight, shape it so that it is straight. If it's really off, you may need to readjust your seam. But this is what we're going to go with. Kind of iron all of these. I'm going to give it heat and pressure. Alright, so these are all the sections we're going to need to finish our block. And here's how we're going to lay them out. Let's separate these trapezoids for a moment. And we can start with pink or we can start with red. Either way, we want to alternate the pink and the red. And the way that we're laying them out is so that these points that are the center of our block come together. Okay? You see that? Then what we're going to do is we're just going to flip. In this case, I have red on the right, so I'm going to flip the red on top of the white, right where it is. This is that center seam, and because of the way we press, it's going to nest. And I'm just going to put a little pin in there where my center seam is. But it's also going to nest here so that we can get these sections straight. And then this isn't going to nest with anything, it's just going to line up edge to edge, and you do want to control the way your seam allowances go. You want them to stay in this direction because as you start piecing these together, different parts are going to align and need to nest, and so your seams need to be in the correct direction. Okay? So you have this seam nesting here, and you're also going to have this seam nesting here. Alright? I'm only going to put one pin in, but I am going to, as I sew these, pay attention to what's nested and make sure they stay nested. This is the exact same pair. So I'm just going to flip this on top, and this center is my priority for keeping it aligned. Also, this seam allowance is going to be down away towards me, so the presser foot's not going to press this seam into itself like it will for these other two nested seams. These other two nested seams that I'm not pinning are going to be pressed together by the presser foot. So the one that really does need to be pinned, if you're going to pin one, is that center one. So we've got these two pairs. We're going to go sew these together.
So before I start to sew, I'm going to check my first point that's nested, which is going to be the background to the center square here. I want to make sure that that stays nested. I want to align my sides, and I want to have at least a 1/4 inch dog ear here, so where this V is should be the 1/4 inch mark, or the V should be bigger, depending on what you're going for here. Okay, so here's my first nesting point. Here's my second one where the pin is. My third nesting point is right here, so I want to make sure that's aligned before I go any further. And then I want to just make sure that my edges are aligned here. And that one's done. Same thing here, this is identical. And you can add as many of these in a chain as you like. You could do a whole border with this. So there's my first nesting. Make sure nothing's flipped up here. Here's my second nesting. I'm already in that seam allowance, so I feel comfortable taking that pin out. Here's my third nesting. Let's make sure my edges line up. All right, let's go look at what we have.
2 pairs. And when I press these, I just want to be consistent in the direction that I press them. So for these, I want to press them to the left. I know that probably sounded crazy, but maybe when I get these two together, it'll make sense. So I press these, now I'm going to finger press them to the left. So when I'm deciding which direction to press my seam allowances, that's what I'm thinking about. Like, where do I want these to be when I add this onto the quilt? Is it more important for them to be easy when I put it on the quilt initially, or when I have the bulk of the quilt and am adding more borders? So that's kind of my thought process. You could also open your seam allowances. Then you're going to have more work either way. You're going to have more work pressing them open, and you're going to have to watch your seam directions when you're adding this to your quilt, and if you add another border after that, you'll have to mind your seam allowances again. So that's that. So these pieces are identical. This is what I would call my base block, because I have 2 different colors going on, and you can just add repeatedly over and over again and make a chain as long as you like. So I'm going to, this is where I'm keeping in order, we're going to put these together just like we did the first pairing. So here's my center. These seam allowances are oriented exactly the same. I'm going to put a pin in here. And then these seam allowances that nest are going to be pushed together by the presser foot, and these seam allowances that nest are also going to be pressed together by the presser foot. So let's go put this together.
So I just want to make sure that nest is seated well, that my edges are in the right position. Make sure that my seam allowance hasn't flipped up here. Then I'm going to line up the last one, which is right here.
So for this, I want to be consistent. I want my seam allowances to continue to go to the left. So let's put this right here. And I'm going to finger press to the left. And then I'm going to iron it. And you just continue like this. You can pair or add them one at a time. It's all up to you. And make this as long as you want. For this block, we're only going to have 4 of these that are full block, and then we're going to have these trapezoids that go on the end. So my pink one's going to go on this end, and my red one is going to go on this end, so that we continue our color swap. Let's go ahead and do that. Right here, I'm going to put a pin in right there, That's the same as the center. And let's go ahead and set this one up as well. Put that on top. Nest that center. Now, I did press one part of this incorrectly. This part should still go towards the square. It should not go towards the background on these doubles. It should go towards the square so that they nest properly. So I'm just going to flip those seams. Alright, well, let's sew these. So we've got a nesting right here at the top above the square. Then the nesting at our pin, and then we have a nesting right here, which is in the same location. It's just the different fabric. I want to make sure that my points come together at the end. And these cuts are not on the bias. This is the bias cut. This is a straight grain cut. So you shouldn't have any problems with it warping on you. But still, don't force it. Don't tug it too much. Okay, so there's my first nesting. Here's my second nesting. And my third nesting right here. And then I just want to make sure that my points are lined up as well as my side. And we want to continue with our seam allowances to the left. So I'm going to flip this one on this side. And I'm going to flip this one on this side so that I can flip this over, or under I should say, to the left. And then this one continues to the left. And give all the pressing. And then last but not least are our finishing triangles. Okay. We're going to go on like this. See, this is extra large, but it's going to make sure that I don't miss anything. So you could probably do this at 5 inches instead of 5.5. Yeah, a 5-inch square, I'll correct that, would be the perfect size. But I went 5.5, so I'm going to stick this on there, and I'm going to stitch this from this side, and I'm just going to make sure that I have the same amount of dog ears on each side. And again, mine are a little big. I think I'm going to go with 5 inches in the direction. So when I edit this, I'm going to put 5 inches in the text, just so that you're not wasting half an inch of fabric. Same thing on this side. I just want to even out my dog ears. I think I went with 5.5 inches because my rectangles were 5.5 inches, and I just was able to cut the square from the seam strip. So maybe I'll leave it at 5.5 inches. You just know that you need one strip of the background that is 5.5 inches. But as I was saying with the jelly roll strip. Since you only need 5 inches raw, you could just double up your jelly roll strip and get yourself 5-inch squares that you're cutting to triangles. So you could do this whole thing with jelly roll strip. Alright, so I'm going to sew these 2 triangles on, and then we'll be ready to square up. And I'm going to sew this with my seam allowances up on top so that I can control the direction. Get myself lined up here. Let's iron this. Alright, so I could either just iron both of these out, or I could continue with my seam allowances towards the left side. I am opting to continue to the left with our little spritz of water, and this little spritz of water. So this one is not the way it naturally wants to go, but I mean, it goes easily enough. Get the other side. That one's going to be super easy. And I'm going to give this a good press, and then we can square this up. As you can see, I've got quite a bit of space here on the edges. That means that I should be able to square this up to 16.5 inches if I wanted to. If I have a 16-inch block. So that if you're making a quilt with 16-inch blocks, which is more normal than 15-inch blocks, you can still use this pattern. To give that a measure, you could actually square this up to maybe 17.5 inches if you really, stretched it. But 16.5 easily. If you did that, you would just want to, you've got 6 of these diamonds, you'd want to put the 8 here, and this way, if you want 6.5 inches, you need to put it at 3.25. So if I was going to make this a 16-inch block, which I think I will in this case, because I think I'm going to just make a coordinating pillow for my quilt, I would find my 8 and I put it in the center. This is not perfect, but I think I'm going to leave it. So I'm going to put that at 8, and then I still want it to be 6.5, so I need it to be 3.25 for that to be center. So 3.25 and 8 puts me at center. Then I want the 3.25 mark to also pass through my points on all of these diamonds. So this is kind of going up until it's there. So I want that 3.25 line to go through the center line of all my diamonds. And I want my 8 to be down the center this way. And now I'm ready to square this up. This would be squaring it up to 16 inches. So that's a mistake. It should be 8.25. So I'm going to slide it over. 8.25. That will put my 16.5 at the correct location. 8.25 and 3.25. Alright. Now I'm ready to square. That's why you do your math twice. So I'm going to square this up, and you see I have plenty around the outside, almost a 1/4 of an inch at the top and the bottom, and about 1/2 an inch off the edges. And I'm going to rotate this around, and I'm going to put my 6.5 and my 16.5 on the edges. Okay, and we'll square this up. All right, and that is our finished block. Let's go ahead and get a little thread back here. Very happy. So if you're making the quilt that I made, you're going to square this to 15.5 inches wide, 6 inches. So your center would be at 7 3/4 and 3 1/4 is where you put your center mark to get it at 15. Or you could do it this way, have it be at 16.5, and then cut it down to 15.5. So you'll notice that my spacing is a little different here, so I should have more than this. When I cut my blocks, I think my seam allowances were a little tighter because my 16.5 didn't cut off my points at all. So if you find that your points are going to be cut off, right, that it's just going to be a little too wide, then come back in and stitch your seam allowances just a little bit wider before you cut it down. So stitch your seam allowances just to the left, maybe every other one, about a stitch width. That's going to bring the whole thing in. You are going to have to retrim your edges a little bit maybe, but it should bring the design in so that you don't cut off your points at all. When you're using a seminal design cut on the 45-degree angle or 60-degree angle, or on a 90-degree angle, honestly, and you find that it's not matching up exactly, that's how you're going to adjust your border. You're either going to let a little bit of, well, I recommend making another link, right, and then adjusting your seam allowances, making them just a little bit fatter, which will take some of the space out of the top and shrink it down to the size that you need. That's how I adjust my borders when I use seminal piecing. It works really well. But here is our spacer filler for our open diamond quilt. If you wanted to use this, you're welcome to do it. The sashing that I used around the block, the center block, is 2 inches finished, so 2.5 inches cut. That's what gave me the 6 inches, which is 4 inches added to the 2-inch gap that I already had. And I made 4 of these. I put them at the cardinal position, and I'll show you a picture of the whole finished quilt.
I just wanted to get a quick shot of the finished quilt top. I forgot to do that. It finishes 66 inches wide by 82 inches tall. You see the medallion there in the center, the 4 blocks at the cardinal positions, north, south, east, and west. In addition to that, I added 2-inch sashing in the brown at the top and bottom, then 4 inches of sashing in that floral red at the top and bottom, and another 2 inches of the darker red at the top and bottom, so I would have a rectangular quilt instead of a square quilt. And I think things turned out pretty well. Of course, you see the blocks that we made in the last video. I'll make a video for the drafting of the medallion and the sewing it together, well, the piecing it together. I lost the footage of the actual stitching it together, but it's mostly paper pieced, and I'll probably make this medallion again in a different colorway, so you'll get to see that. But that's how the quilt top finished. So this is the finished block. This one I have measuring 6.5 by 16.5, so it'll finish 6 by 15, but you can cut this down to 15.5 by 6.5, so it fits with the blocks that we made in the last video. I hope you'll give it a try. If you do try it with the jelly roll strips, send me a picture, tag me on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok. I don't have a lot of content on there yet, but I would love to see what you make. It makes me so happy to see what people make with my patterns. Thank you again so much to everyone who subscribed last week. Thank you to everyone who commented. I really appreciate it. You've really helped my channel to grow, and I want to continue to do that. 2025, I'm gonna focus more on YouTube, so expect a lot more, and thank you so much. Thank you so much. Have a great day.